skills, organizing skills, and so on. Wonderful. Great. And also, welcome Kochi and Ibadan. It was nice to see, yeah, a short glimpse of your videos. I hope that you're all fine. It's not morning for you, it's afternoon, I guess, right?
Yeah, you only now.
Yeah. Okay. So, all good? Okay, great. Wonderful. So, let's do a small recap of yesterday. Shall we do that? Okay. So, what did we see yesterday and what you retain from that stays with you?
We went through smart thinking and then less smarter thinking.
Yeah.
I can't say I remember all of them off the top of my head, but it's my notes. But yeah, you went to basically smart thinking, and I think also strategic thinking as well after that. Or maybe they're the same thing. But yeah, I remember that. That was good. And you went through the SWOT analysis and other things as well.
Yeah. Was it too much of content? Okay. And anything that you may want to share, Kochi or Ibadan, from what we saw yesterday? Do you remember the Bible verse that we spoke of?
What caught my attention yesterday was on a prioritizing task, whereby we were taught on what is important and urgent, do it. What is important and less urgent, schedule it. What is less important and urgent, delegate it. What is important and less urgent, delete it.
Wow, yes, that's right. Prioritizing tasks, right? So good. Does anybody remember the Bible verse we spoke of in the beginning? Not exactly, you don't need to tell me the reference, but it was about what?
What was Exodus 31?
Yes.
Right? The skills one about Bezalel?
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. We saw about the skills of Bezalel, God choosing Bezalel and Uri, and then few others. He had anointed them with His Spirit, with wisdom, with knowledge, with skills to do what they were required to do, right? Yeah, good. So let me give you a little bit of recap from my side. So the very first day, what we saw that God created us with a purpose, okay? And He made us to flourish, to multiply, to take care of His creation. Yeah. And He had made us in His image. So we have to reflect Him in all that we do. And we also saw the macro picture of what is a GDP and how we all, whatever we do, how it is contributing to the GDP. Then we moved on to people because I told you that though business is all about money at the outset when you think, but actually not. It's about people. It's about people, and that's why we spoke about emotional intelligence. And I talked about the leadership skills. Now, again, when I spoke about the 6 leadership styles, it is only pertaining to the emotional intelligence. It means how a person handles emotions, how a person takes stress or deals with stress, how a person communicates with others in their group, in their organization, and how the person empathizes with the other. Okay, so it is only in that context of leadership, emotional leadership. Then yesterday we saw about God giving us those skills in order to accomplish the purpose that He has given to each one of us, right? And then we saw that God is a God of order. So it requires us or calls us to demonstrate orderliness in what we do. So that's why we saw all those tools, how to manage the different tasks, how to manage our time, how to prioritize our responsibilities, and so on. And then we also saw a cultural dimension towards the end. Don't get confused. It's not pertaining to individuals, okay? I want to emphasize that. It is pertaining Hofstede's cultural dimension. We saw those six of those, right? That pertains actually to a nation. It's every nation has a national culture. And within that national culture, there can be communities who may show different values than what the nation shows. For example, Christian communities, they're a little bit more welcoming, they're more open, even if the country's culture doesn't demonstrate that at an outside. And within the Christian community, there could be families who may be closed, who may be open, depending on the exposure. Okay. So there is something called national culture. So maybe you are as YWAMers when you move around all over the world, or you're working for a company, for an NGO, for an MNC, whatever. If they're sending you to Philippines, to Gambia, to Kenya, the first thing that you look is what is a national culture? How do they behave? Let me tell you one small example. When we came to Switzerland way back 23 years, we learned many small things. Actually, the details, the devil lies in the details, right? So in India, back home, when we are given gifts, we usually don't open right away. Okay, when we get birthday gifts, we just take it, we go and put it in a corner, and then everybody leaves, and we open, we enjoy, we cherish. But here in Europe, for instance, when somebody brings you the gift for your birthday, so you do the birthday celebration, and before all the guests leave, you actually open the gift one by one. Everybody sees actually, and you tell how you like the gift and what you would do with that. In the beginning, we did not know, so we would just take it and we would just put it in our room. But then later on, as we start to sit around and mingle with the culture, we learn that. So these are small details. So if I would travel to another country where this is not practiced, I would just put my gift away because it's also considered to be, you're being very greedy, just to look what's come rather than dealing with the person. So this is again part of the national culture, small things, small details. How do they present? How do you greet one another? So in Switzerland, you give 3 kisses on the cheeks, actually, In France, it is 2, and somewhere else it is 4. So you just need to deal with the culture according to the culture. And within the cultural setting, it looks good. Okay, so ready for today's lessons, new part? Let's see what is there. Okay, so let's begin with the words. I would only talk about 2 set of words today as well, okay? One is this one, and there is another one later. So today we're going to see God is God of nations, yeah? So yesterday, God is not a God is a God of orderliness. That's what we saw yesterday. The day before, that God initiated work, right? That's what we saw. So today is God is God of nations. He's just not my God, not just the God of my family, not just the God of my church, but he's the God of nations. If we look in the Old Testament, although if we believe, from the Bible, from Genesis, we know that all of us are descendants of Adam and Eve. But what intrigues is actually, God called Abraham out, and then he made a nation out of him. And today, that still exists, that you can go back and you can trace all the way back. So God is mindful of nations. Let's read this verse. Can somebody read out loud for me? It's Revelation 7, verses 9, 10, and 12, okay? Is it too small? I didn't think about that. Okay.
After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. Praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. Amen.
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 So in Genesis, we see how God calling one man and making a nation out of him and bringing salvation through this nation, through this people group. And here is the last book, okay, Revelation. And we see that at the end, when we stand in front of the Lord's throne, we see nations there. We see all tribes there. We see people of all color and language there. God is really mindful of who we are, where we come from, what is our origins, how we look like, our ethnic, racial attributes that we bring along. It is very sacred how we are, where we are born, how we are born. Okay, so I want you to understand that God is God of nations. He's really interested in what is happening in the nations. So that's what we will see today a little bit. Here is a picture. Yeah. Does anyone know this picture?
We've been there.
You've been there. Okay. Yeah, that's the United Nations office in Geneva. So the biggest office of the United Nations is in New York, and the second biggest is in Geneva. Then besides it, we also have one in Vienna, Austria, and then in Nairobi, Kenya. Okay, so we have one there as well. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the United Nations, okay, and then we will go into different sectors a little bit, and then we will go looking at a little bit about what is profit, okay, and then I will only share a few stories, and I'll leave it to you to ask questions. So, does anyone know what is this United Nations all about? Or what do you think?
I mean, I can kind of spitball. It's like a platform for all the nations of the world to meet and to kind of talk about different issues and agree about certain things to move towards, and basically I think like a platform to allow conversation.
Okay.
And more.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. So that's right. United Nations is actually an intergovernmental organization. Okay, that means between governments. So what happened was in 1945, 39 to 45, yeah, when the Second World War finished, the world was in ruins. The nations were in ruins, actually. Okay, not the world, I would say. Nations were in ruins. Lives were really, lives and families and societies were all broken. So then 50 nations came together and they formed the United Nations. It was in the United States that they came together and they made a United Nations conference, and out of that birthed the United Nations in 1945, and the headquarters in New York started to be built then, okay? And in the meantime, what was happening here in Europe was the First World War, right? When the First World War finished, again, it was the same thing. Nations were in ruin. Europe was in catastrophe. Okay, basically every home was affected, and every home had somebody, who was part of the, war, and they lost some or several or at least one of their family members. It means a lot. So what happened? So some of these nations came together from Europe to form the League of Nations. This was after the First World War. Okay, so the League of Nations was here. You see the Geneva UN office? It was actually a very small office, and that was the office of the League of Nations, right? And then after the Second World War, United Nations actually came to formation, and United Nations actually the ILO or the League of Nations dissolved, and the Geneva office also became United Nations. Okay, so United Nations it has its origins from the League of Nations. Just a history, okay? I'm just telling you that you know how to link, not necessarily every detail should be on the tips. So today, there are 193 member states in the United Nations. You see those flags? Actually, when you come to Geneva, You see those, it's called the Flags Gate. There are other gates as well, but there are two main gates. One is the main gate, then this is the Flags Gate. Okay, it's called also the Peace Gate. So there are 193 countries. In the world, there are something like 202 or 207 or 212 countries. I don't precisely remember. But out of that, 193 countries are members of the United Nations. Okay, and it's actually a non-profit organization. It's an NGO, just like Wine and Dealer. It's an NGO, right? It's not a profit-making entity, or any other NGO that you have. It's actually a non-profit organization, but it's run by governments. Governments are the ones who are running it. Governments are the members of it, and yeah. So out of this 193 member states, Switzerland, for instance, is a member too, but it became a member only in 2002. 2002 or 2000? 2002, I suppose. Yeah, only in 2000 it became a member. Although Switzerland hosts the big office here in Geneva. So what is the role of the New York office? They are taking care of security, because the very purpose United Nations was set up was to maintain peace in the world. Okay, peace and security and order. So the New York office takes care of security. Security is about borders. Okay, every country has its borders, right? And the borders are defined and by international laws and so on, so that no country infringes the other's territory and so on. So the New York's role is security, and all the big meetings of General Assembly takes place in New York, and there is something called a Security Council meeting that happens in New York. Whereas here in Geneva, the main focus is peace, actually. Peace, and then they have a Human Rights Council. That's the reason they have Human Rights Council and so on. And then the UN, it has a charter, and it has a UN Declaration of Human Rights. I won't go into that now. I want to make one more point here. The UN, yeah. So that time, when 75 years back, actually, now it is 77, I suppose, but 75 years back when the UN was established, it was to bring back order in the nations, peace in the nations, but to support them. That was the purpose. But now the objective has been diluted. I will leave it to Benji so he can talk probably about that at the end. Okay, I'll show you some pictures, and I would like you to share one or two examples. When you share some examples, if they have some questions, you can probably answer that. And one other thing about the United Nations office in Geneva, look here in Geneva, it's not just the United Nations office in Geneva, but the UN has many other agencies. I don't know if I mentioned about it earlier. So already in the 1850s and 1870s, when communication, the Graham Bell, when he invented the phone, and when we started to communicate over phone. So 1850s or 1870s, already they established a telecommunication organization. Okay. So today it's called ITU, International Telecommunication Union, and International Postal Union. These are all now agencies of the United Nations. So if you come to Geneva, you will see all those high-rise buildings. One is ITU Telecommunication Union. The other one is the Office of the Refugees, United Nations Office High Commission for Refugees. The other one is a World Trade Organization, where all the nations come together to agree on what should be the trade rules, what should be the trade embargoes. That means, how should be the conditions, how should we punish some country who are not abiding with the peace and security issues. Yeah.
So would each country have different ambassadors and people for all of those different agencies and things, or is it the same ambassador?
Yeah. So actually, out of this 193 nations that's represented in Geneva, about 180, they have their office in Geneva. And they are called permanent missions. They are not called embassies, okay? Because they are multilateral. So when they come, they are actually ambassador to the United Nations and United Nations organizations like this 16 or 40 others, that I said, World Meteorological Organization, World Health Organization, because each of these organizations make policies for the whole world around their own area. Okay, so when an ambassador comes, normally the big countries, wealthy countries, like say Russia, Canada, United States, they have several ambassadors. So there is one ambassador. It's called permanent representative. It's ambassador, but you call it permanent representative. Okay, so there is one PR to UN. There is one permanent representative or ambassador to the World Trade Office, because that's a big thing. Then there is one ambassador to the ITU, okay, International Telecommunication Union. So the wealthy countries have several ambassadors or permanent representatives to different organizations, because there are so many organizations. But the poorer countries, or countries with very less income, because it's very expensive to have your office here in Geneva, okay, the cost of living is extremely high, one of the highest in the world. So for them, it's very difficult to afford to have so many. So the smaller countries, they usually have one ambassador with a very lean staff of 3 or 4 taking care of all of the agencies, and they have to represent their country in each of that organization. They have to answer, it's like you are cooking, you're cleaning, you're washing, quite like in Switzerland, like how we do, we are everything all in all, because we do not have the concept of maid actually here. Well, going back to the United Nations. So answering your question, depending on the country's wealth and its economic riches, it will have many actually. And if the country is poorer, they only have one ambassador and they stay extremely busy. However, for example, ambassador to New Delhi, example, let's say, okay, we have our friends from India, right? So when an ambassador is sitting in New Delhi, he only has a bilateral role. So his role is the Swiss ambassador to New Delhi. What does he do? His job is to build bridges between India and Switzerland. It could be trade, it could be economy, it could be culture, it could be sports, it could be music, whatever. Well, culture, sports, and all of those things comes under culture anyways. But, so the same thing in Bern. Okay, Bern is a political capital here in Switzerland. So there are 150 embassies there, and there are ambassadors, and these are bilateral. So when let's say a Nigerian ambassador who sits in Bern, his job is to take care of affairs between only Nigeria and Switzerland, okay? But there's another Nigerian ambassador who sits in Geneva. He has to answer and give reports of his country to all the organizations. So it's really very, very busy, extremely busy, and most of them don't sleep enough, and most of them work very late in the night, and most of them don't have weekends and so on. And that's where, Benji and I, we can identify with them. We kind of come from that kind of a lifestyle. So, we are able to support them. We are able to support them, to listen to them, the personal challenges, and to pray with them, and to show them some solutions, that we as a Christian organization can offer. Okay, so that answers it. So now you understand, right? So there are United Nations office, and there are so many UN agencies. Okay,
With the poorer nations, is there quite a high turnover rate for ambassadors?
No, because there is there is a period for which somebody is sent.
Yes.
Okay, so when somebody is sent, usually in a diplomatic service, 4 years is the term. But in the poorer nations, or I shouldn't say poorer nations, but nations that cannot afford, what they do is they make their ambassadors stay longer, 5, 6 years. Where
Depends on the countries.
political,
Because they have elections every 5 years.
yeah,
So there is a new president, they send a new ambassador.
yeah,
And some countries don't have elections, they have the ambassador for a long time.
yeah. Yeah, so for those of you who are online and who didn't hear, Benji was telling that, for some countries it depends on, their government actually, okay? Because those who come here as ambassadors, they are coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the Foreign Affairs belongs to the government of the country, right? And a little bit more detail, maybe it's not necessary, but still to tell you, actually, an ambassador can be a career diplomat. That means in his or her country, they have actually sat down for those competitive exams to enter the foreign service. For example, in India, it's very competitive. Okay, there is one service. It's called the civil service, and you write, and when your scores, depending on your scores, you go to the foreign service, or then the forest service, or the administrative service, and so on. So every country has its own system. So when you come through the countries, country selection procedure for Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then you're called a career diplomat. So no matter whichever government changes, you are still in service. But in some countries, usually like United States, and they not only United States, but there are many countries who do it. But we know quite a few from the United States actually, who appoint political appointees. So the prime minister or the president, the president of the United States, for example, he chooses that this gentleman, he has never been a diplomat. He doesn't have a diplomatic career or education. However, what he has done in the society, he was a businessman who had really reformed or impacted the society. So he says that this is the guy who needs to go to Geneva, for instance, or to, I don't know, another country where they have some challenges, and he wants that person to go and represent because he thinks that that person can do a better job to represent the country. So they are called career diplomats. Yeah, you want to add something?
The political appointees, but it's not mainly that reason.
Yeah.
It's people who invest in their, the president has a vested interest, like this businessman gives a lot of money for political campaign, and they say, okay, it's a kind of an incentive. Okay, I will put you in Geneva. I can put you in this.
Okay.
Is it like a businessman?
Yeah, if there are businessmen who invest so much into the.
So the president can.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are also reasons what Jessy said. Some real politicians want to send some people, but usually the career diplomats are the one with knowledge, with understanding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the president has the power to bring back these people and send whomsoever he wants to, he or she wants to.
Yeah. So just for the interest of those who are listening from here, I'm not sure if you were able to hear Benji very well. So besides what I said, actually, so there are also bad reasons for which political appointees are appointed, because, he brings money on the table for that political party or the government. And then the government decides that, okay, now let him go and let him be there. Okay, that's what he was trying to tell. So it's not always with good intentions. And that is why leadership matters, And as a Christian, if I am put in a leadership position, I really need to think, why am I here? Just like Daniel, just like Esther, just like Joseph, they knew that God put them in that place of power for a reason, So often Christian leaders have difficulties and challenges because what they practice is not in tune with what the rest of the world practice. And sometimes some Christian leaders, they actually go along the flow, whereas we know several leaders because we do the Policy Institute in Geneva, where it is attended by very, very high-level officers, government officers or politicians. And there we teach them how not to compromise on those values. And there are many who don't compromise, So we are not popular. Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have a specific name for that, or is that more private, personal, one-on-one?
No, we have an official institute.
Yes.
I mean, we partner with the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy for the past 14 years, and we have our own institute called the Global Institute for Leaders Excellence and Nation Building.
Yeah. So because I'm not sure if whatever you are saying, if they are able to hear. Are you able to hear whatever Benji says in between? Benji is my husband. Okay, all right. Works for Levi. Okay, so they heard you. You got the point? So it's a policy institute, and we partner with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. So the UN has a training wing. It's one of the best in the world, actually. in technology, in information, and all of those actually. Okay, it's called the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. So it's a training wing. So they train governments, they train government employees, and
From a
and so on.
secular point of view.
Yeah, from the secular point of view, obviously, because it's United Nations, they have a purpose, you see. So we run this institute called Leadership and Public Policy. So we used to partner with them. And when we partner with them, actually we were all those who teach, we're all Christians. They're either former prime ministers or former presidents or MPs or MLAs. So they have the Christian
Millions?
values. Huh?
Also,
I
from
mean,
the legislative.
when I said legislative assembly, not just from India,
Upper
but
house or lower house,
upper house or
different
lower
countries.
house. That's what I meant. Okay, so they're from all over the world who come. So why did I come here? Anyways, so just to tell you that, yeah, you had a question. Did I answer that question? Yes, we answered it, right? Okay, so shall we close the chapter of United Nations here? So you have some idea, right? So it's an intergovernmental organization, all right? And it fights for the Human Rights Council, human rights, and so on. But it has changed. They are the ones who promote all the LGBTQI and all those values that doesn't align with the Christian values at all. So many Christians sometimes they think that United Nations is actually it's a evil place to be for Christians to associate. But that's where God calls you. Okay, but there are some wonderful Christians out there. Amazing Christians. Okay, I think I'm conscious of time. Okay, this one I just wanted to present to you because we talked about the goals, right? You know these goals?
I was just looking at the website and I saw this.
Yeah, so we talked about goals, right? Goal setting yesterday. So United Nations, it has a goal. Actually, it had a goal in 2000. They set up a goal, and the goal was supposed to be achieved until 2015. And then in 2015, they came up with this goals. It's called Agenda 2030. So United Nations wants that in all over the world, until 2030, we will attain this. So there are actually 17 goals. In fact, it's 16 goals, and the 17th one is actually a partnership for the goals, okay? So I won't talk about everything, but just to tell you that, no poverty or quality education or good health and what is it called? Industry, innovation and infrastructure. Yeah. And 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. So that's where we work actually through Global Leadership Geneva. Okay. And 17 is the United Nations cannot do things on its own. They need to partner. They need to partner with governments. They need to partner with private sector. They need to partner with the NGOs. Now, what is private, public NGOs? I'll talk about that later. Okay. So these are called the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs in short. So you might hear this term every now and then, SDG. So every company tries to adhere to it in some way or the other way, okay? So SDCW, for example, Wheeler, you find out what are you trying to do? So we have a little NGO in India. Through that, we try to give equality education. Through our organization, Geneva, we are working on peace and justice, okay? And with our company, probably we are trying to provide decent work and economic growth. So try to figure out where you fit in and try to use that language when you're dealing with the governments, private sectors, and so on. Let's look at one more slide and then let's go to, you wanted to write down?
It's okay, it'll take me a while.
To write down, or take a picture, okay? Yeah. And if you want to know what is sustainable, we'll talk about that later. I just want to it's good? Okay.
Yep.
You're good? Are you with me?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's look at one more thing before the break, perhaps. I told you about the partnership, right? So the UN has to partner. So in the marketplace, there are different players. So there are governments, there are companies, there are churches, and so on. So how is a market classified? The market is basically classified into three major areas or sectors. That's what it is called. One is public sector. Public sector, it means to do with government. Okay? A government of a country, the government-run organizations, those are called public sector. Because public funds the money. We pay tax, and the tax is taken by the government, whether at the federal level or at the state level or at the community level. They take it and then they reinvest for various things. What is the role of the government? The government's role usually is to make sure that, infrastructure of the country is good, and that all basic thing that is needed in a country is being provided. Example, infrastructure would be good roads, railway access, post and telephone, and nowadays it's wireless and so on. So that's what the public, and like hospitals, healthcare, okay, schools, and so on. So then the second sector is a private sector. So what is a private sector? Private sector is all companies, whether it's multinational organizations or international organizations or just independent companies. Anything that is a company that is established for reasons of making profit, to fulfilling a need in the society to make profit. That is a private sector. Okay. I can only take example from Switzerland for the moment. Migros, for example, Migros, a supermarket, for instance. A supermarket is what? It's to make profit, actually, right? So some of the things, depending on the country and its situation, that means economic situation, political situation, they may keep it with themselves, like telecommunication here in Switzerland is privatized. Okay, it's private parties, private companies who run it. But while in some other countries, it's the government who keeps that. The government provides, because the country is either not very much ready for private partners to come in, or there was a situation such as war, or they want to have a control or regulate of what kind of information is going through. So it's just an example. Are you with me? Yeah. Then there is a third sector, that's called the social sector. So the NGOs, our Christian churches, our charities, all of those come under that. Okay. So there are three main sectors, right? Public sector, private sector, social sector. Got it? And if you would see, there is also called a fourth sector nowadays, which is actually convergence of two of these, actually. So United Nations, it's actually, I told you, it's a non-profit organization, but that's nothing compared to the non-profit organization that we run in India, for instance. United Nations is actually a non-profit organization run by the governments, the public sector. So there is you see the convergence, public sector, social sector. And there could be a private sector, public-private partnership in some cases in countries. Within the country may decide that, okay, my country is not ready for the cyber technology or space research that we want to implement. So there is a private company which is very, very well known. Let's say it's Elon Musk's company, for instance, and he says that, okay, I will partner with, let's say Cuba, okay, random example, Cuba. And then the Cuban government will work with the private company of Musk in order to provide that kind of space technology in their country. Okay. One other example, the social. Today there are more and more social enterprises or are NGOs or social organizations that generate profit, but they also have a social goal. So let's say Swisscom, for instance, it doesn't have a social goal as such. Their job is to provide telecommunication services to all the clients. Okay, but there is another company, for example, there is an institute, and that institute, its job is to employ people so they can work in the farmland. Okay, there's a farmland, so they employ people, and whatever products they harvest, they actually sell it and they make a huge profit. But that profit, the owner doesn't take it. Instead, he says that, let me say, like he reinvests into growing that, or making something for that particular community, maybe a school, maybe a new garden, maybe a new park, or maybe a new bus facility because it's too far or so. So that social entrepreneur, he runs that organization just as a profit-making organization, but the purpose of that is to bring social good to the society. So they are called actually social. It's called social investment. You might hear that, okay? You might hear the term when you're talking to somebody. He might say, "I'm a social entrepreneur." So that's what it means. Okay, yeah, good. I will just stop here maybe for this moment. Yeah, I don't think you need all of those things, Yeah. Let me see. Okay. Do we have 15 more? We
Yeah,
have some more
15
minutes,
yeah,
right?
15 more
Let me
minutes.
take one more talk. I know. Do you have questions here? Maybe until so far, because next I will move to profit. Yeah. Questions, or you agree, you disagree, you have a different understanding. Okay. Just one term I want to say, sustainable. Sustainable, it means that something you start and it generates a certain income, that within from that income, you can just continue that again. Or you don't need to look for outside input to keep that one running. That is what it means by sustainable. Okay? Yeah. Let me go to the next topic, and then after we discuss that, we'll take a pause. Those online, Kochi and Ibadan, are you okay so far? Any questions? Mhm.
Well, okay.
You can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Let's look at the second scripture portion. We talked on the first day that companies are, we generally think companies are to make profit, right? That's what, I'm setting up a company because I want to have some income, yeah. But then we live in a world of profit, crazy profits, So how much profit is enough? Let's look at what the Bible says. Let's take a scripture portion, okay? Let's read that. Would somebody read out loud for me?
When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and foreigner. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 19:9-10.
I don't know if you noticed something in this verse. It's talking about harvest, and when it's talking about harvest, it says that when you harvest, don't just go all the way to the corner and make sure that every single thing is harvested. Of course, you can do it because you are the one who planted, you are the one who, took care of the land and all of those things. But God says, do not go and harvest. It's called glean. When you leave something, it's coming from the Jewish traditions as well. Not tradition, actually, it's a commandment of the Lord to the people of Israel, actually, and the Jews still practice that, actually. So you leave in the corner. This is a picture of, can you guess who is that in this picture?
Ruth.
Yeah, that's Ruth. You see that Boaz's men, they are working in the other part, right? You can see the men working there. But Ruth, she's a widow, a young widow, and she is picking up something. She's gathering something. And this is actually called gleaning. That means a part of harvest that they leave in the corners. And why are they left in the corners? It's for the poor, it's for the widows, it's for the older people who do not have any income, any money, any source, any resource. So it's for them to go and pick up. And it says, do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. So you have those apple trees, orange trees, mango trees, whatever. So God says, just don't make sure that you have picked up everything. Well, for us, it's more, you can use it for your own situation. Maybe, you don't live in a place. If you don't pick that up, it will go waste. Okay. But what God is trying to say here is just don't scoop out everything. Think whatever you are doing, think also for others. Think for the stakeholders. That's what God is trying to tell us. In fact, if you continue reading that part of Leviticus, okay, it further says, God says to them, do not steal. And he says that, do not um, do not oppress your neighbor, don't rob. And he says that if don't hold the wages of a hired servant till the morning. For example, if you own a garden and you have engaged somebody for their daily wage labor and they live by that. And so God says, if you engage them for that, just give them the money and send them off because they will live with that. Now, today, we are not gleaning, we are not harvesting, we are not, engaging. What I mean to say is we need to see how we can translate those. Those are all principles that God is giving us. And principles is something that you can translate across any circumstance. So that's what we will see, okay? Let's look for, let's see. So here God gives us a limit of profit, how much we can make. So there is something called responsible business, and a group, a team comes together from the Oxford University actually, and I have some wonderful Jewish and Christian friends on the top of the ladder who are actually responsible for this thing to happen. So they are businessmen, they work for huge multinationals, they run family-owned businesses and so on. And what they say is that we do business, but in a responsible way. And how can we do business in a responsible way? So there is this very famous business principle. It's called the triple bottom line by John Elkington. He says that, when you think of your business, you think of these three areas. You think of your profit, because you want to make profit. You think of people, but you also think of planet. So what does this mean? For example, how do we think of profit? Profit is because, let's say, you have a wealth of knowledge of how to make fish farms. Okay, you have this competency because that's how the country that you come from and your background, it gives you that knowledge, and you'll come to another country where people do not have this competence, but it's close to the sea and so on. So you set up fish farms. Okay, so you have set up fish farms and you are producing fish, and then you can sell it and you make a lot of money. So you're making profit. Great, people are getting fish. That's fine. Okay, but then you are also engaging people. Okay, so you have gone to that particular village and you have made this fish farm, and who is actually buying things from you? It's those 100 families from that little village. They are buying. So be mindful of them. Okay, so it says that if they do not have roads, for example, you bring your goods back and forth. You need, for example, for the fish farm to be built, he needs those swimming pools or whatever pools that he needs. So obviously he's bringing in raw material into that village from some other place, right? So you leverage with the government to see if there are broken roads and so on. So you mend it for people. And you see that if there is no bus transport, let there be a special bus, be plying for that place. And then if there is no school, you set up a school, and so on and so forth. One simple example that comes to my mind is a friend of mine from Netherlands. She was telling she actually has African origins, but of course she grew up in Europe. So she used to go to Mozambique year after year. And she said that Mozambique actually had a lot of Christians when she used to go as a child. And then, well, she's now in her 50s actually, and she said the last 10 years when she went, she saw that it's changed. Now there are a lot more Muslims than Christians actually. Why and how? So the small Muslim community, so they just moved around, and when they moved around, they were the ones who started those little shops, grocery shops, and so on. So they will go to a place with their family and they will start a grocery shop. And the grocery shop, it makes a lot of profit because people need, because they bring goods and so on. So they became so big. So they put up another 5 grocery shops in the next town and so on. So more profit. And so more people they had to engage. So they got more Muslim people from their community to come and work. Okay. And when they came, so they came with their families, they came with their children and so on. And then they established a smaller supermarket somewhere. So again, they got more people to work on that. So the Muslim population grew and grew and grew. And as they grew, they also started to have more children actually. So then they decided, okay, let's set up a school where the children can go. So not only their community's children went to study there, but also the other local children went to study there. Okay? So, and then they basically, so when you feed people, food you need every day, clothes you need some, right? So when you start to address the basic needs of the people, then that is the power that takes over the place. So that is the reason why the Christians, I'm sorry to say that, while us, we were very busy actually building churches, not caring for the needs of that community, that society. We were very busy, rolling out our programs of, which is not bad actually, which is really not bad. But what is need? Everybody needs bread every day, you see. So then gradually the Christian population decreased because they were not doing much for the society actually, And then it's now mostly actually, I heard from my friend that it's more of Muslims there and they control. So then they come into the politics and then, the government becomes theirs and then then they decide what needs to be happening. Another few more minutes and let me talk a little bit more on this. But then, so I showed you, right? People, planet, profit. Now, how is it about planet? Let's say, what is planet? So this fisheries company I told you, the fish farming, they are, let's say that this fish farming is now actually, in order to make the fishes grow bigger, they're using some kind of chemicals, okay? Let's say that. And this chemical actually would make the fishes grow big and more profit and so on. But the chemicals that they use actually, because the water has a flow and it goes into the bigger water reservoirs or resources and it's polluting. And over the period of time, it's actually the water, when it gets polluted, it becomes a breeding ground and it actually makes it breeds some kind of bacteria which are extremely harmful for people. Okay, even those big factories that we have, let's say that, the company that I used to work earlier, we used to make glass bottles, right? And I told you that in a day we make 500,000 bottles in one day. Okay, so it means we are putting out a lot of waste into the water and also in the air. So we are making profit, but who's paying the price? The people, those who live in that area, the children are falling sick and so on. So a responsible business actually calls you to take care of what you're doing. So when I used to work for the company, I was responsible for compliance. So the compliance is, the government people would come and they would check the water. If there was a bacteria or something in that water, reservoir of that place, we would have to put millions to clean that one up. And if we are emitting, very high emission in the air, we were supposed to put up filters, which cost like millions. So that is called responsible business, So it's not that you just make money and then you do what you want. Get it? Okay, I would stop here to continue the rest later after the break.
Okay, thank you. Then we take a 30 minutes break and
Do we have Kochi and Ibadan with us? Yeah? Did you have a good break? Yes? Lovely. So, anybody wants to just recap what we heard earlier? Any points? We saw one organization this morning, right? Which one was that? Sorry, we're doing like a kindergarten,
No.
Yes, that's right. That was the United Nations.
Intergovernmental organization
That's-
and NGO.
Yes,
That
that's
started
right.
in 1945.
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
New York is in charge of security,
Yeah.
Geneva in charge of peace,
Yeah.
and slightly different functions and agencies
Mhm.
within the UN.
Yeah.
And countries, if they're wealthy enough, will send different ambassadors to different things. If not, then that poor ambassador has to go to 200 different engagements. So yes.
Yes, that's right.
That sort of thing.
That's right. So we saw the Intergovernmental Organization, so United Nations as the intergovernmental organization. Then we talked about the 3 sectors, right? So what are those 3 sectors? Social sector, private sector, public sector. Yeah, those were the 3 sectors we talked about, just to give you an idea. And then I also said that there is something called social entrepreneurship or social impact, or and there can also be private public partnership and so on. Okay. Then we started with something, right? We started with a Bible verse. From which book was the picture? And which book was the verse from? The verse was from Leviticus, yeah. And the picture,
from Ruth.
that was the picture of Ruth. Yes, Ruth, and she was gleaning. Yeah. So why did we look at that particular verse? It was in the context of
Sustainable business.
yes, also
How much is profit?
Yeah.
How much is the
Yes.
also, but how much profit can we have, right? So I just told you earlier that, the Lord tells us not to just wipe off our plate, to take all the profit from what we are doing, but to be mindful of others who are stakeholders. Now, I talked that we can do business responsibly, right? That's why here the title is Responsible Business. And this is what we started just before the break. So you can do responsible business, as John Elkington says, by taking care of 3 priorities.
Yes.
So whatever activity you're doing, go ahead. Yeah, that's the one.
People, planet, profit.
Yeah, 3 P's, right? People, planet, profit. But as a Christian, I think there's another P that we need to add to it. The purpose. Why do we do what we do? That's very, very important. So I would say that's my 4P. You can go ahead, go and add other P's if the Lord shows you to. So profit, people, planet, and I gave you an example of those fisheries, correct? Yeah, how they make
Yes.
profit and how they have to take care of the planet so that you are making profit, but you are not destroying the world around you. You're not polluting the water. You're not breaking the road in your village when bringing all the goods and that the government has to fix that one. You can't do that because you need to be conscious of what you're doing to the planet. And the people, we need to really care for the people that we are working with. That's the reason I emphasized on the emotional intelligence part on day one. Business is all about people. We are fulfilling the need of the people, need of the community. We are engaging people to work with us. People who don't probably come from the same mindset like us, the same skill set like us, the same understanding like us. That's why the emotional intelligence is needed. Yeah. Now, when we say of profit, we usually think of only one profit. What is that profit? Money. Let's call it a financial profit. Okay. However, I told you this team from Oxford. I would also tell you a few examples later who are talking about responsible business. They say that when you talk of profit, it's not just financial profit, but there are more profits that you need to take care of. Those are these, you see. So you have to, when you do a business, when you engage in something, you just don't think of financial capital, but you think of human capital or social capital. Human capital, sometimes it's not nice to call people as human capital, but human capital is the people that you engage. For example, we have our headquarters in India in a very small village actually. We just decided to do that, and we engage quite a few people to work there because they do not have any means to go and work and earn income. Okay, so we engage people there, so we are giving means to livelihood. So people that work with us, that we give employment to, that's our human capital. Okay. What is social capital? Social capital is this really the power to tap that human capital that is with us. So the people, those who work for us, as well as the people who live in that community. So if I told you about the bakery example in Vila, right? So when I'm doing the bakery here in Vila, I'm thinking of all those 100 families here in Vila. And maybe I'll give you one example of a company called Mars. You eat the Mars chocolate bar, sneakers, and so on. It's made by Mars. Actually, Mars is a family business, okay, from this Mars family. And they started this forum every year. It takes place. I just got out of this forum in February, and this is called the Responsible Business Forum by Oxford. And it started like this: the Mars CEO founder. So he asked his people that how much profit can we have? What is the limit that we can have? Because we can go on making profit and profit and profit. Where do we stop? And that's how the whole concept started. And taking you to one example of Mars. So Mars, in order to practice responsible business, what they did was they went to Nairobi, the streets of Nairobi, the slums of Nairobi in Kenya, and they saw that they could connect with some churches there actually. I mean, they could connect with churches because the man who was behind this whole process, he happens to be a Christian, a believing Christian, and actually a Messianic Jewish Christian. And what he did was he saw that there were a lot of churches in the streets of Nairobi, okay, that he was connected to, and those churches had so many people, okay, and they decided that they will engage people from these sets of churches, okay, to recruit them, to give them a small training about the business practices that they need to adhere to, because Mars is a big corporation, right? So there are rules and regulations to train them how to do sales and so on. And they said you can sell it for this much, and this is what like for example, if you sell for 10 francs, you can bring back, like for example, 5 francs back to Mars, okay? The 5 francs, you can have it for you, okay? That's what they said. And then what happened, these people who were going to these churches and those who lived in the slums, they had their own contact because their asset was the social circle that they had, you know? They didn't have money, but their strength was the social capital they had. They lived in those slums and they knew the people around, okay? Or they lived in the suburbs and they knew the people around in the suburbs. So they will take this little bar, those chocolate Mars bars in their bags and so on, and they would sell it and they started to make profit. And then eventually what happened was these people, some of them were trained and they were taken to, they were given a management course and so on and on to establish. So what happened was Mars, what they did was they tapped on the social capital that these people had. It's a huge strength we usually ignore, the social capital. For example, you connect with the person A. For example, when you come to Viva Miller here, you actually connect with people from many different parts of the world, isn't it? You don't need to go to Canada, you don't need to go to India, you don't need to go to, I don't know, Cuba.
Yeah.
You meet people. Why? Because YWAM has established a social capital. Do you understand now what is a social capital? Each one of us have a social capital, which we ignore. So this is important too, to pay for the social capital. So what they did was they actually started to engage people from their community. Yeah.
How within that, do you make sure that you're careful not to build a pyramid scheme? If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of like with your social capital, this person, just what's the differences there? Because I think I know. I'm just interested.
No, with Mars, it was not a pyramid scheme that they did it, okay? Because, like I said, it's a multinational corporation,
Yes.
and they were doing it as part of a project that they had, okay? They have a think tank, and from that think tank, the objective was to demonstrate to the world that you just don't make you just don't do projects, you don't just run companies to make financial capital, but the whole purpose was to demonstrate that these are the capitals and to take other companies into this ride. So they didn't build any pyramid scheme. Actually, it was directly Mars and them.
Okay.
It was really Mars and them, Mars and them, Mars and them. Okay, I don't know today what is happening with that, but that was a time. Okay, so these people from the slums, they were engaged. They started to pay their medical insurance so that they can have good medical care for them and their families. And they gave some of them they chose and gave them training on sales. Some of them they chose them and gave them training on management and so on and so forth. Okay, it's just one example. The other example probably would be same Mars actually. They went to Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. So they saw that there were a lot of street vendors in that country. Okay, street vendors, people those who go on the street. And then it's from the street vendors that many people bought their regular day-to-day vegetables and so on. Okay, they didn't have the possibility within their lifestyle to go to the market and buy. So what they did actually, they initially wanted to put the Mars chocolate, but then they thought that they're putting too much sweets into, in a place where people were not so much used to, and it's not good. So they put the kiri cheese, the kiri cheese that you get when you go to Migros, you find it's those little. I never eat the kiri cheese actually. It's called kiri. Marcus, have you ever eaten those kiri cheese? It comes in the little round red color, it's like a red color.
Yeah.
The one, the baby bell.
Baby Bell.
You're right. I'm sorry because I'm not a cheese eater.
Oh no.
So
Not yet.
there is a limit to it. I can enjoy fondue and raclette, the baby bell, that's the right name. So what they decided, they started to put some of those baby bell, actually the baby bell, the company itself is baby bell. So baby bell decided because they are also family-owned business and they want to do a responsible business. And they were part of this program, they want to demonstrate that, okay? So baby bell, they decided they would put this small cheese. So they thought that, okay, that will give them to those people some calcium or whatever they need for the instead of putting the chocolates. And in this process, they saw that two things happen. One is the sales for the women, usually it was men, women were there, but women who were the street vendors. So their sales went up a little bit, but at the same time, they also noticed that their own bell cheese or bell, what is it called?
Baby Bell.
Baby Bell. It was actually competing with their own product. Okay, you see in business you need to think of all of those things. So and they did not want that Baby Bell competes with the vegetables that they are selling because vegetables is good. So they need to say that how much you can sell. I mean, not just giving them, okay, take more Baby Bell and sell more and more and more and sell our product. Not that. So they came to point that they to say that, okay, this is the amount of Baby Bell that you can take it within your basket. And then they actually engage people from the street vendors, some of them in an organized system to actually give their families, welfare schemes and so on, and engaging them. So to demonstrate that there is something called social capital, and that comes from the human, those are around you. So we need to, when we do business responsibly, we need to think that, are we doing justice to the social capital or human capital? And are we tapping the social capital around us? And if we are tapping, are we just sucking things out of them? Or are we actually, doing something for them? Okay. Then the second is I told the natural capital. The natural capital is the same thing that I said. If you are cutting, if it's a paper company, you make paper. Okay, you make papers actually. So obviously, if you are producing a lot of papers for businesses and so on, then make sure that you are also planting as many plants, in that regions where you chop the plants off, or in those countries where your raw material is coming from. So the natural capital is, and what you have as a natural capital is incredible. Like I think we were talking about the African countries, right? Past few days with some of us, I don't remember with whom, but it's amazing. Some of those countries, that it has such a lot of natural resources. So how do we tap the natural resources that our country has, or our community has, or even we have? Maybe it's a wealth of a family. So how do we tap the natural resource that we have around us? Yeah.
If it's appropriate to answer now. But yeah, I'm just thinking of the Amazon rainforest and how a lot of these businesses for fast food and just general meat industry in Brazil are meaning that so much of the Amazon has already been cut down and is being cut down. In terms of natural capital and responsible business, what do you think could be some steps there in helping people actually, see that this is not good for their business or the planet?
Yeah, so I think when a management has its vision statement. So they have a vision statement which is constant, and then they have the mission statement, and then during the course of the year, they also have their operation goals. They have the strategic goals, not operation goals. Okay, that's different. Strategic goals, and strategic goals, the company keeps usually adapting every few years. Okay, and with the change of the leader, it usually changes. So nowadays, companies are put under much stricter regulations. Actually,
Yes.
much stricter regulations. So they, in the strategic goals, they have to demonstrate that they are integrating that. So if their company is responsible, like I said, cutting down trees, then what are they doing equally to plant trees? If their company is actually polluting the water, the water reservoirs in that city, in that town, in that village, what are they doing to clean up that one? Or what are they doing to minimize the waste that is put inside? If they are emitting more emissions, then what are they doing? So nowadays the government regulations are so strict, and it's going through papers and certifications and so on. And in larger companies, the employees down up to the shop floor, they're being made aware. So there are always they usually need to sit for certain mandatory courses. It's really mandated. Everybody has to take off. Okay, you have done this anti-bribery codes, anti-corruption course, environmental health and safety course. So it's just a very simple course. There'll be videos and so on, and there'll be questions and so on. So every employee from the boardroom to the shop floor is aligned to that thought, that mindset. Okay, but at the same time, community should also, at large, should also be informed. And the informing the community actually lies also in the hands of the companies as much as in the hands of the government.
Interesting.
You see? It's really very important. Like we are talking more about the bio products and so on. It's very good. Sometimes we're sitting and talking to some farmers, they're friends of ours actually, and they say how much work it takes to, make these bio products and certifications and so on. And then when it is on the market, it's pretty expensive. And the cost of living now and so on. Some people, they always choose bio product, okay, knowing that because they decided. And some people, they want to go for bioproduct, but they do not have that much dispensable, money to invest in bioproducts. So you need to choose, if you have the ability, what you would choose and why you would choose. Does that answer your question?
It does,
To some
yes.
extent?
Thank you, too. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we will take some more examples too, okay, on it. One last capital that I want to talk about, it's not financial capital, but it's a shared financial capital. What does that mean? So the very first day I talked to you about stakeholders, correct?
Yes.
Over shareholders. So normally we know only shareholders. Shareholders are those who are invested into the company. Okay, the shares of the company that they own and so on. But stakeholder is everybody who's working in that company from the shop floor. That means from the factory level, down where you have those production unit. From that place to the top, everybody is a stakeholder. The person, for example, there was a cleaning company that was engaged in our headquarters because I used to work for the headquarters, not in the factories. In Switzerland, we only had a headquarter. So there is a cleaning company that would come to clean. It was a big office with 250 people. So when they take a decision, it actually should involve them too, Although they are an external company, but they have a stake. So when we will close the company, they will also lose a job. Okay, we should think of, for example, when you have a factory in France, for example, in Versailles, if you're engaging 600 people, so you need to think that there are 600 families. Okay, let's say that a family has 3 to 4 members. They are being fed because of this factory, because of engaging people in that factory. So when you close, you're not just closing your factory, but you are ripping off that place from economic gains. So those people who have to disperse and go and find other means to earn money, that's where the local government kicks in. The local government comes and negotiates and talks and wins them back to continue and by giving them incentives. Yeah, so that is shared financial capital. It's not just what the investors put, but a stake for everybody. So here SBCW, right? Is that right? I always yeah. So the stakeholders is the leaders who run it, the course leaders, the students, and those who are helping in various capacities to keep this place up to tune. People, those who are doing the visa processing, that's very complicated and complex actually to get people from different places to this country, or people who are cooking, those requires enormous lot of capabilities. So everybody being cared for. So you understand? So there are 4 capitals. Okay? Shared financial capital, natural capital, and you call it the human capital, and social capital. Social capital is coming by really the connections. Okay? Human capital is the people. Are we good?
Yes.
Any questions? Now, one more point I wanted to make is, when you have shared financial capital, there is economic development. Okay? When your company progresses, your community progresses. The community, wherever the company is. If my bakery is in Lees, when my bakery does well, it's good for Lees. And Lees is in Canton Bern. And if it has become really very big, then it's good for Canton Bern. And if it goes even bigger than Canton Bern, then it's good for Switzerland. Just like Nestle. Nestle is from our region. Okay? And look at that, Nestle. I never thought when I was growing up as a child that Nestle was a foreign company. I always thought it's an Indian company. You know, when I was a kid, Philips, it's the Netherlands. You know, I always thought it's an Indian company. Bata, a Canadian company. I thought it was an Indian company.
Yeah.
You know, because as you grow up as a child, you think because they have so much embedded into the local culture. You know, the things that they produce and they make and so on. So there is an economic development that we bring, okay? And when we have natural capital, by engaging the natural capital, we actually protect the environment. So going back, on D1, climatic changes and so on. Yes. So yes, we are responsible for taking care of our climate, you know. Uh, our home. We like to keep it beautiful, clean, and tidy. But if I decide, you know, I will buy McDonald's food and I will just leave the, you know, the bags and packages and some leftover food there, it will be just there. Then I'm responsible for making it a breeding ground for, you know, all those insects and, you know, flies and then bacteria and so on. So just as we take care of our own living space, we are called to take care of our other wider environment. So I think as a Christian, we need to be really responsible. I am very meticulous with my waste management. You know, I know here in Switzerland, we are all very meticulous with our waste management, okay? But some of us, we give it extra care, and some of us take it a little bit more easy and lightly, okay? So it's up to you, but we need to contribute that. Then with the human capital and social capital, we actually make social progress. Yeah, when you engage people in their community, because you've given them a means to buy. Maybe they were living in huts, mud huts, but because you engaged them, you had given them some livelihood, some money. Now they can upgrade from a mud hut to a simple concrete house, and then from a concrete house to a brick house, you know, and so on. So you bring social progress. You see how much power we have actually when we engage things in the right way. But things are not easy. It's complex. Okay, we live in a complex world, of course. If our mindset is ready for that, then we are able to face those challenges because for some, we need to reach out to a lawyer. For some, we need to reach out to a subject matter expert. Some, we need to reach out to a friend who has more experience. And some, we need to reach out to a bank to ask for their advice. Okay? We're good with this. So the triple bottom line, the 4 Ps, people, planet, profit, and purpose as Christian. Why we do what we do. You're free to run whatever organization you want to, but make sure that it is aligned with God's call on your life, and it's most importantly aligned with what the Bible says. Okay? Okay. A very famous statement. You don't need to really learn it by heart, okay? But it actually comes out of this responsible business forum. We always say, don't take any reward without responsibility, okay? No reward with responsibility. We have worked with many different countries, and in some places there's a tendency to take the name, you know, to take the reward. They have not been responsible to do anything. But when it comes to giving the award or rewarding time, they come to the front to take the reward. So if you have not responsibly engaged, don't just take the reward, okay? You don't deserve that. No investment without involvement. If you make an investment, get involved to the degree that you can. We cannot get involved 100% over that, okay? But maybe you can prayer support that, you know, that work that's been done. Maybe you can give a financial contribution. Maybe you make yourselves available to go and give your expertise. That's what it means. No investment without involvement. Finally, no productivity without participation. So productivity is, you know, how efficiently you use your resources to make the most. That is what it means by productivity. So if you see things not going well, just participate to help them fix or give your suggestions what could be done to make it better. Okay. Now, it's not very important for you to remember those three things, okay? But I'm just sharing you. But I would now actually, I just have some pictures, but I'll quickly show you some pictures and I would call Benji to come forward and share a typical example, okay? So I'm just going to flip through slides, all right? So, and okay, Albert Einstein was not a Christian, but I just want to take this example because education is one of the very powerful ways that you can transform a nation. Many countries put a huge amount of their GDP into the educational sector. Okay, for example, here in Switzerland, education is the responsibility of the cantonal government. Okay, and why I'm saying education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. Because sometimes we think it's just learning of facts, right? It's not just the learning of facts. Learning of facts is good, but how we engage, how we apply it. I see that Switzerland is really very good at that. Okay, but I heard and I have seen that Israel is even one step ahead in that. Okay, so education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. That's very true. We forget. We don't remember, right? Last week on Thursday noon, what kind of food we ate? Last year on 15th of March, what kind of food? Oh, okay, sorry for the yes. Yeah. Yeah, Thursdays is soup, right? Okay, well, anyway. So maybe you would not remember. I gave you a lot of information the last 3 days, and you would not remember everything, but there are some things that sticks out to you, which will actually make you to use that one, and that will probably stay with you all through your life. How to manage my time, how to prioritize my tasks, and so on. But that is fine enough. So why I'm talking about this, because I want to give you a few examples, just flipping through pictures. So this is Jessy, okay? She was 5 years old and her father actually died and her mother approached us in 2005. Okay, Benji and I, we were PhD students at the University of Fribourg, had one scholarship and three of us lived on that, myself, Benji and our little baby, okay? Very little money, but then we were actually supporting several families in Switzerland, sorry, not in Switzerland, in India. But there was one young girl, a Swiss girl, she was 15 years old, daughter of a very close and dear friend of ours. And surprisingly, her father left her mother, okay, in a very strange circumstances. And it was very bad time for her. But then she had to go and she had to give tuition to get some money, okay? So one fine day, when we were still working on our organization, how to formalize it. It has a story behind. I don't want to go into that. But then this friend came and asked if if there's a child in India that my daughter can sponsor. She wants to do the sponsoring. So this was Jessy, the first child that we formally sponsored through FICF, Foundation for Indian Children's Future, in 2005. And the sponsor was a 15-year-old Swiss girl, and she was paying her from her little, earnings that she had. She actually comes, yeah, and she is today a law. No, not she. Jessy has actually finished her bachelor's, okay, and she is now doing her master's. But then the one who sponsored, she's a very well-known lawyer today. Wow. Okay, so generosity starts like that, isn't it? And since then, there are many students on and on. Community development program, let's look at that, okay? So you see when COVID happened, a lot of laborers, a lot of them, I'm sure many of us are linked with many different countries, right? So the situation was very bad because they lost it. Like for this, he's Muthu, an auto driver, he lost his income because nobody was going out and nobody was, so by running this auto, he earns his income to feed his family. So we stepped in to support him. But then, it's only a temporary means for a while, you see? And these are some quarry workers. They're very, very, very poor tribals. And they use their hands and a very small tool to break these stones and then to make a living, it's very, very less what they make. So we try to, support them or engage them. But again, you're only doing that at the level of feeding them for them. But actual progress happens when you take them to the next level. Okay, but we begin somewhere, right? So, okay, I just want to give you some pictures. Uh, you might be, these children, they come from tribal backgrounds, okay, from a state in India, which has many wealthy people actually, but they are very, very poor. And these children, they die, most of them, they die of sickle cell anemia. It's a special kind of anemia, and they die because of that. Many of them don't even pass through age of 5, okay? And probably you know this gentleman, right? That's Vinay actually, yeah. He was also a student here at SBCW, yeah. So, well, to tell you that these children are brought under one roof every evening, okay? So they're given tuition and they're given some food to help fight malnourishment and to encourage them to go to school despite it rains or shines or there's floods and so on, okay? Yeah, and medical camps are one of the needs, in very, very rural places because there are not so many doctors actually. So that's one way to demonstrate to take care of them immediately and instantaneously, right? So these are all through our organization. This was this is actually our home and our office in the southern part of India. If somebody is traveling, you're most welcome to be there. Going back very quickly, another way how you impart is like every time when Benji and myself we travel to India, besides family and friends and so on, we are actually talking like this was in Delhi, so we were addressing the parliamentarians. They were, this was the Christian parliamentarians or all parliamentarians?
Christian parliament.
These were only Christian
There
parliamentarians. So
out
for
of
all,
600 members of parliament,
Yeah.
there are only like 21 Christian parliament
Yeah.
MPs. So
Yeah.
out of that, we had 13 of them who came.
yeah. So this was in Delhi when we were addressing parliamentarians, and then we speak at some management institutes to give them some of the values that we have learned, both as Christians as well as as stewards in the marketplace. Okay, so these are ways that you probably are doing, and you can still continue to leave your footprints of Christ in you, the hope of glory, wherever you go. Okay, and let me take up another small topic. The other way, next to education, how do you make progress in a country? It's by innovation and R&D. Yesterday we looked at the functions, right? The different functions in a company. And do you remember we saw research and development?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a function. I told you that if you are a medical company and a pharmaceutical company, you need to have research and development. This is an old data from 2017 or 2018. So every country is tracked for its innovation index because R&D means innovation. You are innovative. You're finding new ways, okay, to do things. You're finding new things to do something particular. So invention is one thing. That means you invent something. When that invention goes in the market and when you start to produce in mass, okay, it's called innovation. All right. So innovation. So Switzerland always ranked #1. I do not know last year's ranking. I didn't have the time to look up. I mean, yeah, but Switzerland is mostly, #1 or #2 position. Okay, this was 2018 data. Netherlands, Sweden, UK, Singapore. And then there is also one in Asia. So India was #1 in the Central and Southern Asia in 2018. Every year an index is released and you can always check. So what I'm telling is a country's responsibility is towards investing in education and investing in research and development or innovation is very, very important to grow its market, to make its economic well-being. It is very important to be innovative. You made a picture? You wanted to make a picture, right? Oh, okay. And I had 2 videos. Probably I won't show you now. Okay, it was a video on Switzerland, how innovative Switzerland is and why it is ranking. Why is Switzerland such a small country, but it has such a big GDP? It's because of its innovation. Children are sent when they are 9, 10, 11 years old, if I'm right, 9, 10, 11, or 10, 11, 12, I don't remember, okay, because I have 2 boys who went on different ages. So early on this age, once every year, the boys need to go with their fathers to the working, no, boys need to go with the mothers to the working place, and the girls need to go with their father to the working place. So we are talking about, when they're 9, 10, 11. It's really very early on to go, and every company is more or less tuned to that on that particular day in November to have these kids in the school at workplace, and to take them to the marketing department and to the R&D department and to the reception and so on. It's so exciting. And then at the age of 14, 15, they go into the apprenticeship track. Benjamin Franklin, he said, former prime minister, right? You want to say? Oh no, sorry, it was Benjamin the Israeli that I had in my mind. Okay, sorry. You wanted to say something here? No, because you put up your hand, so
I don't know.
Okay. No, sorry, Benjamin Franklin, not Benjamin the Israeli. I had one quote of his. So he said, "Tell me, and I forget. You tell me, I forget. Teach me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I learn." I was very impressed 2 days back. Joel invited us to eat with him. And we were sitting with Joel and another gentleman from Norway, and both of them, yeah, Steiner. And we were talking about cooking in different cultures, okay? All right. And one is from Norway, the other one is India. And both of them, they can cook incredible. And both of them said that their mothers actually taught them when they were 10 or 11 years old. And cultures are different, okay? I know that in the Western culture, we kind of engage that because we believe in a way that everybody who knows to eat should cook, actually. But some other cultures, it's not so, right? So I was very impressed. And he said he knew it because he was engaged with his mom when he was 10, 11, whatever, early on in life. And today he cooked amazing. I'm an Indian, I'm very critical about the Indian food that I eat anywhere. So it was very impressive. So when we involve somebody, they can learn better. Okay? I had some videos to show you. I won't be doing that, but here is just an example. This is our oldest son, more than 5 years back. He was only 14 years old, I would say, then when he started. He did his 4 years of apprenticeship in electronics, and they would go here in Switzerland and they'd study, like 4 years on the job, whether it's dentist or whether, working as a salesperson in a supermarket or there are officially 360 or so, what is it called? Areas where you can choose from, So they learn practically. And my son, he did 4 years of electronics, and my basic education, my bachelor's is in electronics. Okay, I haven't owned it, but I have to tell you that when he finished, he knew a lot more than I did when I finished my bachelor's way back then. This is our youngest son. He is now 16 and a half, okay? And he also started his apprenticeship in business and administration. He works it's a biosciences company, an American biosciences company. It's in the next town where we live. And it is a European headquarters. And he works there 6 months. He was at the facilities management. And now he's in the commercial department. And 2 days he goes to the management school, the little management school for the students, actually, not the big business management school. And 3 days he goes to work there. Actually, he loves it out there. He says, "Mom, if I want, I would like to go here all the days." He's very intrigued because they're all international. He's kind of that kind of a background, and he likes business, because he grew up with that, listening to Benji and me and so on. So why I'm telling you this is these are models that certain countries practice, okay? Another country that I want to tell you it's about Israel. Israel is called the startup nation. Startup is when you start something new, okay? Switzerland also invests a lot into startup, but Israel is enormous because they say necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when you're hard pressed from all the sides, and not only that, it's a Jewish way of thinking. Read the Bible. What does God say? God says, do this and do that. He, in Leviticus, he gave all the laws around how a nation should be. He took slaves. He took slaves out who were in slavery not for 10 years, for 430 years. So many generations into slavery. And then God takes them out, he makes a nation out of them. So nation has a structure, a nation has an order. And so God gives them that. Isn't that amazing? And they still have that. They have this mindset of worshiping God through their work. And sometimes we Christians, we ignore that. Some of them don't think. Like our NGO in India, it's not a religious organization. It's a social development organization. So many of them tell, oh, you don't run a missionary organization. It's not considered a missionary organization, you know. But that is the way we worship God. That is the way we bring Christ to them. Every place is to bring glory to His name. Okay. Would you come forward? I would like you to share the example of Thomas Ankara. And before that, let me show you a few pictures. Now I told you about FICF changing at grassroots levels. Okay, small kids, poor widows, and elderly in a very small village. Okay, so through our work, Global Leadership Geneva, in Geneva, where we work with ambassadors and diplomats and members of parliament. So here are some pictures actually. And this is an event, actually not from last year, from 2 years, but we just had last week a big event on the International Women's Day where we use the biggest room there. You can't use there's no other bigger room. So there were 48 people, all ambassadors or spouses of ambassadors from 35 nations. Okay. So when they come, we present Christ to them. We don't read a Bible verse with them, or we do not sing there, but we engage with them in a way that they understand and engage. Does that, you want to add something to it? Okay, so we take the ambassadors to Business Connect, to some of the very well-known Christian some of the well-known businesses in Switzerland who have Christians as the CEO. So like Bob's, I took an example the other day, right? Bob's is a large machinery company from our region. Actually, it's in 40 different countries worldwide, including India, and they don't read Bible every day there, but the values that they have translated that goes through all the way down in all the countries. They identify those values which resonates with the Bible, which comes from the biblical values, and they try to use those values in all the countries. So,
Some of-
yeah.
Some of the ambassadors here are from Iron Curtain countries like Iran,
Yeah,
North Korea.
No pictures, right? Yeah, so this one is not, this is North Korea and Israel and many other countries. Actually, we lost track of that, right? Yeah. So it's always in a group of 20. So the CEO talks, he shows around the company, he talks about the Christian values or the values that they practice and the success and the failures.
And also a testimony.
Yeah, and also the testimony. For example, Victorinox is also a company, which was founded with Christian values. So these are all ambassadors, and then we do a federal prayer luncheon, with its full capacity at the Swiss Parliament, and usually, one of the federal councils come to greet. This was Mr. Ignacio Cassis, the president last year, and the foreign minister. This is our Christmas banquet. We invite ambassadors and spouses, okay? And our speakers are from politics or from business, who have transformed their own sphere of influence. And they are Christians, okay, who speak. So they know what to speak and how to speak, and it goes into, and it's a community that we have developed, and people, the ambassadors, they open up because of the trust that we have generated. Ambassadors Roundtable is one way that we bring or address topics of significant importance to building a nation. Education is one of those, for instance, but bringing experts from the area. So we usually take a Swiss expert to speak about it. One little example that I wanted to share with you, I did that. When we did the roundtable on education, we had this gentleman out here, you see, okay, he was a former head of the EPFL. EPFL is the Swiss Federal Institution. There are two of those in Switzerland, one in Zurich and one in Lausanne, where we live. And when he spoke in the morning, he actually gave them so many Bible verses. Every slide was a Bible verse. And actually, in our events, we don't do that. We got a little bit perplexed, actually. You know, he's an
The host that was talking to hundreds of parliamentarians about the Bible and Bible verses, who was he again, sorry?
He was
He
the
was the-
former president of the
Form-
Technical Institute, Swiss Technical Institute.
former president of the Swiss Federal Technical Institute. Okay. In Lausanne. Okay, so that is just to show you, it's 1 week, the institute is 1 week, it's very, very intense, okay? It's really very intense. And that's where we do mindset transformation. Huh? Yeah, maybe you can share some example if you want to. You want to come and share about Thomas Sankara, or can I just finish with these 2 slides? Okay, so you know Mahatma Gandhi, the founder of the nation of India, he said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And actually Christ goes ahead, you know, even forward. The Lord says that he's the light of the world, you know, he is the light of the world. But he also said, you are the light of the world, you know, because we are made in his image. So we are the light of the world, actually, you know. We can bring those changes where we go to. Maybe small ways, maybe significant ways. It's okay. And sometimes, maybe not. We're such an utter failure. But the Lord teaches us some valuable thing through that experience to us. You are the light of the world. That's what I want to tell you. I want you to remember that you are the light of the world. If you abide in Christ, if we abide in Christ. Yeah.
Question just of curiosity. Would people be less offended if you put quotes of Bible verses without the verse reference, but just put, you know, Jesus?
Yeah, you're right. It depends where you are speaking, you know. For example, if I'm speaking in Vivan, I will just put directly the Bible verse. Last week I was speaking to those nations, you know, and we had this verse, you are the light of the world. We did not put Matthew or whatever it is, you know, we didn't put
Actually,
that.
it's the context where, you know, how do we bring that? And we can clearly say within the context, the Bible says that. So it's not a problem, because every other religious people, when they speak, they quote Quran or whatever. So it's not that we are hiding anything, because these are all authentic sources. Bible is not just a religious book itself. It's more, so we do say it when we need to say it.
So, yeah, so we say like the Bible says, or the Holy Bible says, you know, or the wisdom literature says. We were talking about the women, you know, the noble women, the noble woman in Proverbs 31. Last week we were reading that together. Yeah, I see that you're all young, so I think you're yet to gear into that Proverbs 31. And it talks about an amazing woman, and it's an advice of a mother to the king, right? So we bring it in the context. So we bring the Bible, but I wouldn't suggest to say, you know, okay, Matthew 21:7 says this, then you go there, Mark 20. No, if they are, you know, 80% of your classroom is not doesn't know that, then you are not using that reference. but you won't offend them if in the right context you use the right reference. One of the ways that we learned is not to use the word Jesus, if you're a Christian and speaking in a secular crowd, after every 5 minutes, just use the word Jesus where you need to bring at the right point. You make a huge impact by doing that rather than by using, Jesus every 2 minutes. So you need to know where you are speaking, to whom you are speaking. Some of the platforms that Benji has, they are really, very high, and all our point is to see where we bring Jesus and which spot we are bringing Jesus. Where we are saying, because that's the nail. Yeah, that's a bullseye. You should know that. And even when you bring Bible, bring at that one spot where you think is the most important thing to say. Otherwise, okay, yeah. So you get the point?
Yes. Really good, thank you.
Okay, let's see what's, yes. The Lord said, you're the light of the world, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That is our purpose. That all that we do, our business, our engagements, our relationships, our financial gains, should bring glory to our Father. Is that bringing glory to me? Or is it bringing glory to my Father? Okay, so be the light in this world. One last thing, I didn't teach you anything about money or how to measure that, okay? How to use your money, or how does a company actually measure it? I told you about GDP, that's all I gave you. But I didn't tell you how do they measure the success in terms of money? What are those accounting things? That's very deep and it takes another lesson. But
we do need lunch.
Okay.
Is it because leftovers?
But all I want to say is one of the ways business measures, any project is by looking at the payback and ROI, return on investment. That means if I'm investing 10,000 francs, what would I get as a return? 15,000? Great, I have 5,000 gain. If I invest 25,000, maybe I'm getting 50,000. What is my return? 25,000, It's called return on investment. So all business people talk always about what is the return on investment. But I, as a Christian, also, sitting with you last week when we were sitting together at the Oxford Business Mutuality, the gentleman who spoke, I think he was a believer, okay? And he spoke amazing. I mean, he did not speak a Christian way, he spoke only business, and it goes above your head, actually. But one thing that he spoke stood out to me very much, and I took it. He said, more than the return on investment for us Christians is to know what is the ripple of impact that we make. The ROI for us Christians is a ripple of impact that we create. It's a ripple, You did something here, and it goes on and on and on to change the world around us. With Christ in us, we are able to do. Okay? So with that, I close. Mother Teresa said, do things for people not because of who they are or what they do in return, but because of who you are. Who are you? You are the child of Christ, So do it because God has made himself known to you. He has made himself known to you, and he has made you known to you. Why am I here on this earth? For a purpose, with a purpose. Where am I coming from? Where do I go? So know who you are in Christ. People often tell, have faith in you, have faith in you. Having faith in us will not get us anywhere. We need to know that who is the one who, gives us that. Okay? And God has not called me to be successful. He called me to be faithful. That's what she said, actually. And I have to tell you that when we are faithful in small things, God really entrusts us bigger things, Yeah. So what are you called to be in this world? Sorry, one more quote. The world is full of good people. If you can't find one, be one. You know, because often we complain that it's really not a good place, and I don't like my staff team. I don't like the people that I work with. Can you change them? You can't, but you can change yourself, right? I'll leave you with some questions. Okay, not to do with the value of business exactly directly, but yes, that is because it's about you. What are you called to be in this world? Are you willing to be the change that you are looking for? Whatever that may be. What is the motivation behind your education or skill building or the work that you are doing or you are going to do? How would you like to be known or remembered in this world? While you are just typing those notes, I will ask Benji to come and share one example of a leader who actually transformed his nation. Yeah. So, yeah. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jessy. And just one short story. I mean, not necessarily this man was a believer. This is in the 80s, 1983. How many of you know Thomas Sankara? From Burkina Faso, country.
Another country.
Yes. He became the president of the country in 1983 until 87, and he has done an amazing transformation in Africa. Now, this country, the previous name of this land was called Upper Volta. He changed it to Burkina Faso. You know what's the meaning of the name Burkina Faso?
Land of the rising sun.
No, that's almost close. The land of the upright people, the land of the honest people. And he really changed it and he lived accordingly to what he has done. So he did bring quite a lot of reforms in the country, in the area of agriculture, land reform. He also brought transformation in the area of economics, women literacy, education, women empowerment. He also introduced education, compulsory education for children, and he abolished female genital mutilation and so many other things. And he really done incredible. I mean, the land itself, the country has great natural resources, especially minerals, gold and zinc and all those things. So he was also very much a vocal critic on the foreign policy, not to take aid from Western countries. And he stopped everything from World Bank and everything. He said, we have enough money and resources, we need to work hard. And he told his people to work hard. He told his ministers to go on a public transport and no statues for public fear, including himself. And he did incredible work. I mean, as a man who really was very progressive and also very charismatic leader who wants to set an example for Africa. And of course, you know that Burkina Faso was colonized by France, and France was still aiding sport and things like that. So they didn't really very much like it, his policies, because I don't want to get into the details why. So the country was developing leaps and bounds, and so many things were going on, and he was setting an example for other African countries that we can survive, we can really work hard, we can do things, and we can move forward. We don't need any aid and support from other countries if you do that. So from the grassroots level, he really was bringing the country to transform to a different level. It was incredible. Things were going very well, and other countries. And he also was very much for the Pan-African, because he said all the African countries come together, we have enough resources and stuff like that. So if you know what Pan-African is, you can go and Google it and you will find that. And in 1987, his deputy, who was a very close friend of him, and he was actually raised up by the father of Thomas Sankara, a close friend. He was also the Minister of State and Defense, and he sided with the country that I don't want to mention that. Of course, it's you know that. And then they didn't like him, and Thomas Sankara's change. It was kind of threatening for them because they will lose so many things then. So they assassinated him. I mean, his own friend killed him, and along with him, 10 other people, and then they buried him in an unmarked grave quickly, same day, everything. And he took over as the president. And he was there for many, many years. So now the thing is that this ambassador from Geneva, he was this guy, the president who was the current president, he brought from what Thomas Sankara took the country to level 8, he brought back to level 1, completely. Again, it's very sad. And then, of course, Thomas Sankara also fought very heavily on anti-corruption. That was something he was very hard, very strict. And then again, the country was so corrupted again and all those things. So this ambassador called me and he said, could you please, Benji, come and speak at the ambassador's reception about our country. So I'm going there. I need to be politically correct and I need to use my, diplomatic protocols that I don't put him in trouble. So, but how would I speak anything on the achievement that this current president has done? I have nothing to say. So I go there and I talked about the achievements of Thomas Sankara, which was not politically right on my part to say that. But I did not say anything bad about the current president or his policies or nothing. So, people liked it and everybody clapped and all, but this ambassador was very serious. He was very quiet. He didn't say a word. And I know that, he couldn't express anything. And after that, I was just having dinner together and I was taking dinner. And he came to me and he said, Benji, how do you know Thomas Sankara? I said, of course, I'm interested in your country. I read about him. And he said, thank you so much for what you shared. It was so precious. Yeah, because I gave a challenge. I said, may God raise up leaders like Thomas Sankara in your country and to bring this change. That was my challenge thing. So he was very, very happy. And he said, when this man was not necessarily a believer, but he had a vision for his people. And imagine if God's people coming to power a position as a leader and have such a vision to transform the nation. And it can be incredible. The Bible says in Psalm, blessed is the nation whose Lord is their God. God is Lord of the nations. It's not only just Lord of individuals and people, but He is Lord of everything. And that's what it's very important in this past few days, what we were trying to teach and what we are doing is to cast that vision for you to understand and to enlarge your thinking and understanding and even to go. I think the first reform has to take place within the church, the way how we see reality, the way how we see the worldviews and what's going on, and how we see beyond the four walls of the church of the real world, and what transformation that God is calling us to bring. That's very important. But we do have an evangelistic mindset, going and changing the world and bringing people to Christ. That's a very good thing. That's what we think, ultimate goal for us. It is true. We need to bring people to Christ. But that's not all. It's the starting journey. But it is much more to build, to construct, to grow, and then to that God's people, these arrows can shine in those places. Whatever we talk, business, politics, and economics, science, education, and every area of life. So that's one example about Thomas Sankara, but there are some great stories of people who have single-handedly transformed the world with the love of Christ. And I think it's very important for us also to think in those terms, to go back or, to start that little bit of what you said about the ripple effect, to drop that thing in our churches, in our community, where we can make the difference for people to think different. Any question from your part of the last few days, what we shared, and then you have to ask any questions?
Can you change the slide for me?
Oh, you're showing the back.
So who is who? Who is?
That's me and the other one is Jessy. You guess
Who is you? Who is you?
You know who is me? The one with the tail.
You know, you may be a big guy and you may be the one having the umbrella, but please share it with the little fellow out there.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you open the floor for questions? Could you, anybody online, do you have questions? Or, no, we don't need to choose. Any questions, thoughts, suggestions, agreements?
It's not necessarily what Jessy spoke and also what I spoke in the last day, so we both will be happy to answer.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, please.
Do you think having further education is really necessary to bring national transformation nowadays? In terms of getting a degree with the U of N, although it's not technically accredited, it is also recognized by some. You know, there are other ways through experience, through learning, through this, that, and the other. But being aware you've both gone through to master's level and PhD and different things. So yeah, just very interested in what you think about that.
I mean, education is one way, and I think it's really a great, when you have, it gives you credibility in some sense. When I go, for example, and Jessy go to the meet the ambassador, they say Dr. Benjamin Levy Moses, there is something that they can immediately connect with. That's not what they think. I'm not saying you need to have a PhD or you need to have, but education is very important. It's a tool, but that's not the one that is going to transform everything. Knowledge does really help you to think different, but it is more your calling and also the vision that God gives you. And of course, in the Bible, we are full of stories about God's people. So it is essential, very important, but it is not the most important thing of all.
And if I may add to that, you know, there are many people that we have come across who actually learn or educate themselves for themselves, you know. But we are given an opportunity to whatever education we have so that we can use it for others. That is very important.
Perspective is
The
important.
application of your education is important. That is very, very important for me from where I come from, you know.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course, we are taught as growing up as children, okay, you go and you study and then you get a career and you get salary and you build a house and you make money and you are rich. And this is the kind of a common understanding about education. But as I said, it's the perspective that really matters, why we want to study and how do we see that our life is a blessing for others. And through education, how can we bring transformation?
And I would actually add from the business world, if you really have an opportunity to any kind of education of, you know, resonating to your area of interest, please do that. It's actually very, very helpful, you know. And if you don't, you know, sometimes we're very busy early on in life and we want to learn later. Later on in life, when we get into family, kids, and so on, it becomes very challenging. So it is really good to grab what we can as early as we can. Later on, we can keep building.
And the education certainly opens door. You know, there is a ad, I think probably you might have seen. There is a guy who goes to an office and taking tea and coffee for the people who are working inside the office. So he goes and he pushed the door, it's not opening. He's waiting outside until the other guy, he's a little fellow. And there is another guy who went to school, he comes in and he pulls the door because it is written, please pull. And he can read it and he can just ask that. So certainly education does open the doors. Not only that, it's a kind of it enhances our wisdom, understanding, or knowledge of some things in a proper way.
There is a little exception to that. If only you are somebody who are really technically, you are a technocrat, for example, people like you see Elon Musk. He doesn't have a lot of degrees, but he is innovative. That's what he's made for. So today, when nobody looks, what is his engineering skills? That is, he is that. So unless you are that, so yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, Monique Kuchi here. Yeah, I don't have questions, but I really want to thank you for the teaching. It's really been such a great teaching actually, because here in India, like we know, like education is also important, to if you want to influence or things, and then it's much more than than that actually. It's much more than getting a degree or something, and the teachings that we received this week, about the management, people management, all the things are so important actually. Even here in Wyoming, actually, we really want to help many people and help ourselves, learn so much of that actually, so that we can be much more useful, in the kingdom, that so that we would also be able to help many others and be influential, in the society. So, yeah, this week I really enjoyed the teaching, and it's really been so great. Actually, I would really like to listen. You know, even in future, the teachings that you both are giving. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are humbled.
More just like a slightly more general question, but interested. With the Christians you both come into contact with within the United Nations, are a lot of them like in your second lesson with us, Benjamin, you described like the disconnected, disoriented kingdom leaders. Would you say the vast majority of the Christians you meet at that level are like these kingdom leader types, or are all of them very engaged with their faith or not so much?
Thanks for the question. Most people are, there are very few kingdom leaders. This is what we intentionally train them and help them. And of course, we have put mechanism in place. Like every week, we have the hope teams where we come together, read the Bible, and tell them how faith affects their work and how do they apply that in the decision-making process, all those things. So and then slowly, when people really get, like for example, I can tell you, when I started the hope team for the diplomats, and I asked a question, how many of you use your faith at work? And immediately one lady raised up, she's a senior diplomat. I don't want to tell the country. But then I asked, how do you do that? How do you apply your faith at work? She said, I use my office computer to take printouts for my church. Do you understand? I absolutely have no idea, because she said that's a worldly computer and the church things are very spiritual. So I'm using the worldly computer to my office thing to take the printout for the church programs. And then, when I told what does it mean to be a good steward, and how do we see that? And she was crying and crying, and she became one of the kingdom leaders. You see, I think intentionally we are not trained. That's the problem. Yeah. That's absolutely, that's the problem, because we have reduced spirituality to something very small. But when we intentionally train people and make them understand, actually, church should be that kind of a place to train such people. So this never happened. It's a sad reality. But when we do that, they get life. There is another lady who said that, how God protects her. She never takes ticket when she goes in the public transport, and the checkers never come to check because she says that God protects her and God keeps her safe. I said, this is how many people think that. But they are very good. They pray, they read the Bible, but they don't have proper understanding of basic things. So anyways, that's a very good question. There are very, very few kingdom leaders, but we need to intentionally train them. And that's why we have this United Nations Christian Association. Every month we bring such Christians together to pray. First of all, to pray, and then to teach and train, and that they can make a difference in the workplace. If you don't provide them a community and they are lonely. So then they are also with the rest of the crowd. You understand? But when there is, like in a business or at the United Nations, when you have a small community of believers coming together every week, they are so relieved. They can share their burdens, they can share their problems, they can say, hey, today I'm going to make a decision, and could you please pray for me? You see? And everybody is standing together and said, let's pray. And so they know that there is a great support that you are standing together as God's people. But though it is small, but it's very important. Yeah, thank you. But that's a fact. In the public sphere, we don't have many kingdom leaders. That's a big problem. I told you the other day, when we create big gap, then we give room for the darkness. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's more of a mindset question in terms of looking at your life and things. Is so many people, and I think there's even been a trap sometimes or a lie within YWAM that society really says, the prime of your life when you can do the most things, everything, is when you're in your 20s. That's where all of the focus is, teenage and the 20s, right? With movies, with education, with most organizations and places. What is your mindset in terms of seeing purpose and equal value in every stage of life in terms of being kingdom leaders?
Yeah, maybe you can cover me up afterwards, yes, when you are in your teens and early 20s, the person is very moldable. They're very quickly learning. They can really quickly change the worldview, or the mindset can be easily changed. They're really, really moldable. That's what we see, So that is why it's really very important to work with. In fact, as Christians, we should start much earlier. That's when they're little kids, okay? But if we have missed that, the teenage years are really not, whatever change happens, that's very far. And then you go into your 20s, actually, there are so many dynamic changes happening from outside into your life. So there are new questions, and you are again, you are reconsidering whatever you learned, actually. So you see that teenage is more molding, and then the 20s, you're growing vertically. The amount of experience that is coming in your life, maybe because you became from a single to a couple, and a couple to, you really have a kid by the end of your 20s. So a lot of new situations come into your life, and you're learning how to do that. Okay, so you're actually growing. But then in your 30s, you are actually more growing deeper into life's issues and questions, and you're growing more horizontally. So there is more rooting that's taking place in your 30s. And when you come to your 40s, actually, many people say you kind of have a crisis, actually, because then you kind of reconsider, what have I done so far? I have made money, I have made progress in my professional life, and this is the gaps that I have produced, and then you want to really make an impact if you have missed your time on your family and so on. So, and you can also be impacting your surroundings a lot more at that time, because now you have some wisdom, together with your knowledge and experience, actually. So go ahead.
Yeah, what Jessy said, but what is very important is we have to see everything as one unit, not just fragmented and then put it as a separate thing. Because we need, the fabric of the society is every age group and different groups coming together, because all have something to contribute. You see, that's very important. Like the Psalm 127 that I talked about. We have archers, we have arrows. So you sharpen them, shape them, but we need interdependent on one another. So that is how, because when we try to separate everything and see it individually, then it's a problem. But when the Hebrew society thinks all of life as one, not just one segment. And of course, we can shape independently each segment, but it's very important for us to understand all have to be looked into consideration. So relationship is the key. Relationships are the key. What relationship to one another, relationship within the family, relationship to your friends, relationship to your company, everything is based on relationship. Relationship to God and relationship to your neighbor and to oneself. You see how things work?
Yes.
But if you take that away, then you become a product, and then you want to work as a product, That's what it's very important. Everything is knit together as relationships that God instituted in His kingdom.
Thank you. So maybe, excuse me, maybe if Ibadan has a question or if Ibadan has a feedback to give to the speakers, it would be the time for you to do so.
Okay, we really appreciate the teaching, and we pray that the Lord will help us to work on all that we have learned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
For joining.
Yeah, maybe we can take last question now from Catherine, and then we will conclude this session.
How do you view the purpose and being a kingdom leader as you grow old, in terms of as you being general? But yeah, just more kind of like from the 60 plus kind of range. What is, how, purpose, continuing in with what you said.
You mean when you say 60 plus, did you mean
Age.
60 and above?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know because we are yet to strike that, you know.
Yeah.
It's a long way for us, but one thing I want to say, we had the privilege of working with people who are in the 60s and 70s when we were in our 20s already. And we really value that, we were so young here in Switzerland, and we sat often, it was a privilege for us to sit with CEOs and very well-established people. They were in the 50s or 60s or 70s. We would sit down and we would listen to them. And for me, what was incredible was, they gave some crux of life, which actually seemed very simple. When I'm a young person, I was really trying to get a lot of things into stride and so on. But in their talks, I could find that they really summarized the simple things in life. Goes back again to what Benji said: relationship, investment. What is the legacy that you have created so far, and what are you leaving behind? So that gave us a huge lesson early on in life, that what we do now matters. The decisions what we take now matters. It doesn't mean that we always took right decisions. Absolutely no, But this was something that we learned from them. And our boys, they're in their late teenagers. We usually engage, ask them to sit a little bit more, also with some people from other generation, intergeneration is really very important. There is wisdom there. There is creativity here, down here. We learn so much from our young kids, actually.
Just to add one thing, when I'm 60 or Jessy turned 60, looking back, for me, what I would really cherish to see that of my relationships and my investment in other people, and how that I see that grow, and it's so beautiful. Rather than just see how much what I did in my life and how many houses I have or cars I drive, and it's not an inward focus at all. It's the ripple effect that you talked about, and that's a joy. Like, if you could give your life at the service of others, at the end of the days, you can really cherish that that you lived a purpose-driven life and in the service of others. So
Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
With your permission, can I quickly share one small example?
With their permission, because I don't know if they want to close.
No, you want to close, right?
Yeah, soon.
Yeah. So no.
Maybe if it's quick,
1
yeah.
minute.
Okay. Yeah. Very quickly, very shortly. Okay. So there's a gentleman that Benji works with. He's from the UK, and he is actually in his 70s. Okay, and they are working on the Korean Peninsula on a very high level, peace initiatives. He is retired. He has his family wealth and all the rest of things. He can just sit at home and enjoy his vacation. But I have to tell you, he's incredible. He runs around day and night together with Benji to really change the world in that particular peninsula. That actually, it stretches us, but we are so, incredibly touched by his passion. Nobody is giving him an extra salary. He doesn't even get a salary, And what he's doing, well, at the moment he became sick with COVID and he had to be in a very difficult state. But I'm just telling you that is what we learned. That gentleman, and what he does is giving his professional expertise to bring peace in the world, because he is the he's the servant of Christ.
We can do it in our capacity wherever we can make that influence. It could be with our grandchildren by then, or whatever. It's all how much influence and what capacity we have. It's not that everybody can do like what Jessy was talking about, this gentleman, but to our abilities, what we can do, that we should do.
Yeah.
We have no excuse and say that now this is for other person to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
It
your
was such
attention.
an honor for us to.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.